What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 10 NFL Studs and Duds. Busy week here, less games, maybe a shorter episode here. We will see. Before we hop in, a quick reminder, please do hit that like button. Also, a reminder, tell your friends about the channel, this Studs and Duds show. I think it's a really great platform to take a look at the players around the league that you're not hearing on ESPN, NFL Network, whatever it may be. We really dive into each game, who's really contributing to wins or losses, the players that you're not hearing about on those more major networks. So if you want your friends to learn more about the NFL, learn more about more players in the NFL, I think it's a great place to do it. So, word of mouth is the best way to grow something like this. So I appreciate you sharing it. And also use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek if you're shopping for tickets. Easy way to support the channel right there. You'll save $20. Nice user interface. You'll get the best prices there anyway. So go check that out. So we kind of mentioned what this series is all about. I always like to tell people what this is before we hop in for those that are new. Like I said, we go through the best performers each week from the NFL film the week before. While we do that, I will be showing my own custom Madden roster ratings update. So these ratings perfectly reflect how I perceive these guys in real life. So if you don't care about Madden, that's perfectly fine. Just see them as a grade for the player. So we're going to hop in here as we always start with the star of the week. We've got who, in my opinion, is even more so than tight end Darren Waller of the Raiders, who has cooled off in the second half of the first half of the season. Everson Griffen, the comeback player of the year, in my opinion. And I had some choice words about Everson Griffen, and I'd like to apologize. Even if I was right or wrong about potentially, drug-related issues. I think I had cited potentially cocaine last year with Everson Griffen. He basically left the team for mental health issues, and at his age, with what we saw from him on the field, which was a serious dip in production last year, I really didn't think he was going to be able to bounce back. I even thought there was a decent chance that he wasn't even going to be the second best starting pass rusher on this team. And obviously Danielle Hunter's been ridiculous this year. He's still the better player, but Everson Griffen is third in the NFL in pressures behind Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. He is having an unbelievable season. He's not just having a comeback season because he has the narrative. He had the off-field troubles, really struggled on the field, and he has totally come back. But he's not just comeback player of the year candidate. He is right there to me with Joey Bosa, Minkah Fitzpatrick now for the defensive player of the year. He has been that good, and he really doesn't show any signs of slowing down. He had a spin move on Tyron Smith. I talked about it on the podcast this week. There's a few things more vintage as far as pass rush moves go than Everson Griffen hitting that spin move. It's one of his go-to moves, really, and he dominates with it, but he wins in other ways as well. He's got speed, power, flying off the edge. So good for Everson Griffen. I love seeing guys like this who are just badasses, who really got knocked off the rails, right? Life was not easy for him, and he has totally turned this thing around. So I'm really happy for Everson Griffen. He's going to get a nice boost in the roster this week. Just a total beast, one of the best defensive players in the entire league. And then the dud of the week is a guy who had some off-field issues, who has not responded very well at all, and that's Patrick Peterson here. He was suspended for PEDs at a time easily considered by me the best corner in the entire NFL, and I had kind of left him up as one of the 3 or 4 best corners in the NFL until I saw him come back, because I assumed that he was going to come back and play at that high level. And you hate to say it, but a lot of times when these players, whatever sport you want to talk about, when they take performance-enhancing drugs, they face that suspension, but a lot of times they come back bigger, faster, and stronger than ever. Not the case with Patrick Peterson. He is getting roasted almost on a week-to-week basis. He's been bad, and he's been back for 3 weeks now, and he's been really bad in 2 of the 3 weeks. You can just tell he's just not that same top-end corner. I don't think he's a terrible player. I think he's going to be able to bounce back a little bit, but clearly it was time to knock him off of the pedestal as a top 3 or 4 corner. So that's going to be the change there, 91 to an 89. And then no better week to give a Dave Gettleman award, which it has become a weekly thing. I don't know if I'll keep doing it every week or not. You guys will have to let me know if you enjoy this segment. But basically, it's well known, Dave Gettleman, probably the worst general manager in the NFL in 2019, a passing league, puts a ton of emphasis on run defense. And as we see in these studs and duds every week, there are a bunch of no-name dirt cheap interior defensive linemen that come in and stop the run just as well as these guys that Dave Gettleman's spending first-round picks on and building his roster around. So, in a week where the Giants had their 3 really good interior defensive linemen, Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson, and their first-round pick, Dexter Lawrence, they dominated the run. The Jets couldn't run the ball to save their lives, but they still lost because they gave up, 34 points? No better week to celebrate a Dave Gettleman award this week. And this week, it's going to be Zach Kerr of the Arizona Cardinals. And they've had some problems in that front 7, but this was a really good pickup for the Cardinals. Kerr was a depth piece on the Denver Broncos who ends up hitting the market, doesn't get picked up because pretty much everyone already has run-stuffing defensive tackles, but the Cardinals, one of few teams that did need some help, so they go and sign him. And given bigger opportunities here, more playing time, he's done a really good job shutting down the run the last few weeks. So a boost for Zach Kerr for the second week in a row, by the way. All right, so let's get into the games. Only 13 games this week, a little bit less movement in some of these games, still some crazy movement across the board, but hoping this video might be a little shorter for production purposes. So the Chargers-Raiders game, we're going to start with Phillip Rivers, who had probably the worst game of his career there on Thursday night. I kind of poked fun, but I was also partially serious that over 23% of human population could have looked like Phillip Rivers did out there in that game-winning 2-minute drive. It was just embarrassing for him. The throws he was spraying, he just didn't look like an NFL quarterback. Hell, he didn't look like a college quarterback in that game. Just everything was off. Now, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He could respond, but he's also, 38 years old. He doesn't have any blocking. His team is in a lot of trouble right now. He's lucky he's in the AFC because they have a tiny margin of a chance. So maybe he bounces back, but I think it's very clear at this point that Phillip Rivers is not an elite quarterback. And he looked okay the game before, but I don't even think Chargers fans are going to disagree with me on this one. And then we got a little bit of optimism for this Chargers team. This offensive line is terrible and has been all year, quite possibly the worst in the entire league. But one bright spot here was Trey Pipkins. He was a third-round pick out of one of those Dakota schools. Kind of a mauler, but considered a little more of a long shot project kind of deal coming out of a lower competition. But he comes in and looks like he probably should have been starting all along. He was mauling dudes and then looking pretty good in pass pro as well. I don't think he actually started this game. I believe Okung left very early in the game with a injury, which led to them putting Pipkins in. But he looked pretty good. A little bit of optimism for the Chargers fans looking forward who are desperate for offensive line help. And then one more faller here, Michael Davis. He's had some moments here as that kind of low-profile number 2 corner here, but he's been struggling a lot. Teams are kind of figuring out that you can attack this secondary at Michael Davis a little bit, as Casey Hayward's been playing a lot better lately. And then on the Raiders side of the ball, Alec Ingold going up again this year, undrafted fullback out of Wisconsin. He can run block coming out of that system, but been a great fit here, really helping what this team wants to do in the run game. So he's going to go up. I think he even caught a touchdown this week. I know it was under review. I can't remember. It's so hard with these Thursday games. It feels like it's 3 weeks ago sometimes. And then Jonathan Hankins could have been a candidate for the Dave Gettleman Award, but he's going to go up 75 to a 76. He used to be kind of regarded as a star run defender. He's kind of fallen away a little bit, but he looks like he's having one of his better years in his career here this year. Carl Joseph, he's got his flaws, to be honest. I think sometimes he can be a little too aggressive. He doesn't show everything you want in a true free safety. I do like his ability to just light you up and fly to the football, a good box safety. Good player. They've shopped him around a little bit, but I think he's earned his stay here in Oakland. And then the other safety, Eric Harris, he was like the star of this game. Again, I can't remember if he had 3 or 4 picks. I know one of them got called back, but regardless, he was all over Phillip Rivers. He seemed to know where Rivers wanted to go with the football, maybe even more than Phillip Rivers knew where he wanted to go with the football. And he showed some short area twitch to jump some of these balls, but also some long speed that I didn't know he had on the return. So he's definitely stock up. They need a safety to step up because their first round pick, Abram, is on IR. So at least for this year, on a potential AFC playoff push here, they need that second safety, and Eric Harris looks like he's ready to play at a starting caliber level at least. And then PJ Hall, part of this defensive line, it's been much better in the last few weeks. It was a big question I had coming into the year. Even through the first month of the year, I don't think they were very good in the front four, but they've been much better. PJ Hall was a second-round pick last year. Small school guy, freak athlete, a little more raw, showed some flashes as a rookie, but here in his second year, he's showing much better discipline and run defense, which is good to see. We know he's got some explosiveness to get after the passer as well. He's shown some of that, so he's developing nicely here. Plus 172 to a 73. Maurice Hurst also was really close to going up this week. If it wasn't the Chargers' offensive line, if he would have done what he did against a different offensive line, I maybe would have boosted him up, so he might be due next week. And then the edge guys here as well. Max Crosby has actually been a better player than Clelin Ferrell here, but both these guys are going to get boosts. I hesitated a little bit because it was the Chargers' offensive line, but they have been playing, especially Max Crosby, well lately. Ferrell had 3 sacks in this game. Granted, it was only on 3 pressures. Fans of these guys rarely want to hear it, but a 100% pressure rate is not sustainable. And Clelin Ferrell has not been good this year, and we have been dropping him the last few weeks. So we're going to give him a little bit of that back, but I still have a lot of hesitation on if Clelin Ferrell, not just if he can be, a number 1 pass rusher, because I never did. I had him as a number 2 kind of guy coming out. But he has not really even shown that this year other than this game against terrible tackle plays. So, he's going to go up 1 here. We'll see if that's anything he's going to keep doing or if he really is a bust at number 4. And then Detroit at Chicago. Not a ton of takeaways in this game, especially for Detroit, because they're just kind of out of gas. Not really much to take away at all from them. With Stafford out now. But the linebacker, Jelani Tavai, looks like a good pick for them. He's that prototypical Belichickian linebacker in this Matt Patricia Belichick defense. Does a little bit of everything. Rushes the passer, uses that length and size and coverage, thumper and run defense. So, looking like a good pick there. Didn't love the pick when they made it, but he's showing that they have a role for him in this defense, and he's playing well at that. Gerard Davis, who we lowered last week, did actually play a lot better this week. No boost yet because he's been so bad this year, but definitely worth noting. And then for the Bears, didn't make any ratings changes here, but they moved Cody Whitehair back to center where he was last year, and then James Daniels back to guard. I didn't think either were playing particularly poor. They weren't great. Now, with this switch, Whitehair was bad, probably even worse than he was playing at guard, and James Daniels goes to guard and actually played pretty well. So definitely just something to monitor moving forward if they want to keep doing that, or if they put him back to their original position. We'll see. Nick Kwiatkowski, he gets an opportunity to basically start in this game because Danny Trevathan's elbow bent the other way. Hate to see it, but Kwiatkowski, you do love to see a big guy come in, 6'2", 240. You never really know with these bigger guys, and Kwiatkowski has shown this in the past that, he's got some bursts. You don't really see it with these bigger linebackers all the time. Usually they look pretty stiff in space and they can't accelerate well, and Nick Kwiatkowski absolutely can. He's got the thumping ability, but he can cover as well. I think they have a good player there in Kwiatkowski. He's just been buried behind some really deep linebacker room. So I would expect is going to continue to get an opportunity here. That injury to Trevathan looked pretty messed up, so that felt like something that was going to be an IR thing, but you never know. I guess it could be a hyperextension or something. And then interior defensive lineman Bilal Nichols, he was one of these stars of this series last year, a mid-round pick, super explosive defensive tackle out of Delaware. And he's fallen off the face of the earth this year. Looks like a fluke from last year. Young guy can definitely still turn it around, but he only has 3 pressures this year on 109 pass rush snaps. That is miserable, and people are running right past him. He's losing playing time. It's just been a nightmare season for Bilal Nichols, who this team thought they were going to get like a good, stud depth piece on the D-line. Well, Hicks is out, and they've tried to lean on Bilal Nichols, and he has not met that expectation. Baltimore at Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson's going to get a boost this week. Can only give you so much credit when you're hitting wide open wide receivers against the Bengals. That run was amazing. If you are here for the Madden stuff, you'll notice that his running ability has been going up and up and up every week, even if his overall might not be MVP level, 85 overall like you might expect. Well, he just, the rating in Madden is very dependent on your ability to throw, and it's not like he's proved the ability to go out and make all these crazy throws. He's doing better things as a passer, so, it's getting recognized here. He's definitely better than where he started. But yeah, Lamar's having an awesome year. He's, to me, second in MVP for me behind Russ. Big game this week against Deshaun Watson, who's, by the way, another MVP candidate. Then we got Mark Andrews plus 180 to 81. He's been amazing. Really, when you look at the people rising this week, it's a credit to the Ravens and their ability to get players on a budget almost. All these guys either fell in the draft or they traded for him. Lamar Jackson falls in the draft. Mark Andrews fell in the draft. Orlando Brown, he fell in the draft. Marcus Peters, he's playing bad for the Rams. They trade nothing for him, and he comes in. Jalen Ferguson, he didn't necessarily fall in the draft, but he's a third-round pick. This team does as good a job as anyone of getting guys to play up to their upside. So anyway, Mark Andrews has been awesome. All across the board. He's blocking much better than he ever has, and he's been an awesome threat. He's a top 5 tight end this year easily. Then you got Orlando Brown, the right tackle. He's a big mauler, but he's been improving both as a pass blocker and a run blocker. You got Marcus Peters, who had his second pick 6 in 3 weeks this week. We know that that's something he's capable of, but, teams haven't been able to exploit him the way that they kind of were when he was playing with the Rams. So surrounded by more talent here, he's been stepping back up. He was at a time considered a top 10 corner. I think we've seen enough holes in his game to know that that's probably not going to happen again, but he can be one of the best number 2 corners in the NFL for sure. And then Jalen Ferguson, plus 167 to a 68. They've been really trying out a bunch of guys at edge this year. Now that Pernell McPhee is done for the year, they need a guy like Jalen Ferguson, because I do have concerns about that pass rush as a whole. It's a big reason I'm a little lower on the Ravens than most is, you look at them last year, that defense was amazing, but they had Terrell Suggs, Zadarius Smith, who we've now seen is completely legit. So, they haven't really been able to get back to that level. They've supplemented it in some ways, but, in order for them to get back to being that elite defense, they're going to need a guy like Jalen Ferguson maybe to continue to grow fast. Granted, this was against the Bengals offensive line, so I thought about not even raising him. And they haven't been able to get guys like Bowser or Judon even to emerge as like elite pass rushing options there. So then for the Bengals, I will note that Billy Price, who we really roasted this year, their first round pick last year, who was drafted as a center. He's been playing a lot at guard this year. He ended up losing that job in the preseason. He's been awful this year, and with a capital A. But he did start at guard and was a lot better this week. No boost because he's been so bad, but worth a note. And then Jesse Bates, who we finally lowered last week. He's a player I love, but was just not having a good season at all. He got a pick this week, showed that range again, gave you a little more confidence that things are just that bad around him, that he is still a good player, and hopefully they can put better pieces around him to get him to shine, because I do consider him one of the best free safety center field types in the league. But just not shown it as much this year, but going to reverse what we lowered last week. Then you got Preston Brown, linebacker for the Bengals. We've harped on him a lot. Basically our go-to players when we talk about linebackers being big and stiff and not belonging on the field in 2019, it's been Blake Martinez and Preston Brown. Those are really the two go-to guys. And the Bengals just got tired of it. And I don't know why the Packers haven't gotten tired of it at this point. Both these guys have, at a point in their career, led the NFL in tackles, which is just a meaningless stat. We saw Preston Brown try to cover Mark Andrews in this game, and it was just a simple seam route, and he just couldn't even come close to running with him. So the Bengals finally get sick of it. They actually released Preston Brown this week. He's down to a 65, which ironically is the same rating now as Blake Martinez. Next game, Kansas City at Tennessee. By the way, Kansas City, just everything's going wrong for them right now. Two notes on their defense that I wanted to talk about that I noticed just kind of going through the film. For one, big touchdown by Derrick Henry. They only had 10 men on the field. It was Frank Clark was not on the field, and he got just lit up on the sideline for not being there, and it was the easiest touchdown you'll ever see. The other thing with the Chiefs that, credit Sam Monson on PFF for this, on the podcast this week, they have Chris Jones on Nate Davis, who is one of the biggest mismatch problems of the entire week. Nate Davis has been one of the worst guards in the entire NFL. And the Chiefs just decide to move Chris Jones all over the place. They even matched him up as an edge rusher on Taylor Lewan. Like, what are you doing? It's not that hard. Just put him on Nate Davis the entire game and let him go to work. So the Chiefs' defense, it's just spiraling right now. And then you throw on all the injuries, the missed field goals, like the fumble. This game was a mess for Kansas City. I think they're going to be able to overcome some of those fluky elements there for the Chiefs haters out there. But anyway, Sammy Watkins is going down. He was amazing in the first game of the year and then just has disappeared. He's clearly not very good anymore. He's fine, I guess, but just not a difference maker. Mecole Hardman's been a much better wide receiver here. That much is very clear. They don't use him as much as they should, in my opinion. I think he's going to keep getting more and more reps, and this offense is going to continue to get more and more explosive as Mahomes gets healthy. The offensive line missing a bunch of starters. Get Mecole Hardman going even more. Chiefs are going to be fine. I keep saying it. There's way too many signs that say so. Left guard Martinez Rankin, he did step in at left guard here. He was a third-round pick for the Texans. They couldn't get anything out of him. He gets picked up here. The Chiefs like to do this with these high-profile, high-pedigree linemen that are kind of getting a second chance here. It's working right now for Martinez Rankin. Cam Irving was another example of them doing that, and he's been one of the worst tackles in the NFL this year. He's started almost every game because their left tackle has been out for the whole season, and he's been miserable. They got to get Eric Fisher healthy there at left tackle. For the Titans, Anthony Firkser, plus 168 to a 69, Harvard guy. He fits the mold that they like here with these tight ends, which is 6'2", 6'3", about 245 pounds, good athlete, can run block. Same thing with Jonnu Smith. He's been kind of a playmaker for this team, but he hasn't really contributed as much of a blocker for the first part of his career, but he's getting to be more of a traditional tight end here. He's stepped up and had a really nice year this year. I've been impressed with Jonnu Smith. Derrick Henry's going to get a boost this week. He's been good the last few weeks. He is what he is. He's not overly explosive. He doesn't run with the power I'd like to see, but he's steady. He stays healthy. You can give him the ball 20 times a game. He can fight for some tough yards. He's fine. And then Ryan Tannehill was okay in this game, but did definitely impress in the last 2 minutes of this game. And I kind of like balls to the wall Ryan Tannehill. He's playing with more of an effort mentality than we ever saw in Miami. I think he knows that he doesn't have a whole lot to lose at this point. He can earn himself a lot of money by playing well. We're seeing this entire team play with more energy behind Ryan Tannehill and his energy than we ever saw with Marcus Mariota, honestly. So the next game here, Buffalo at Cleveland. For the Bills, this game as a whole looked a lot like you may have expected. Both these offenses have been a mess, but both these defenses have been pretty solid all year. So you got Dawson Knox for the Bills is going to go up. Was kind of a draft darling. He's getting more and more involved here in the passing game. And then Tre'Davious White, want to give him some recognition this week. He's been a top 3 to 5 corner this year. There's been a lot of good corners out there this year, but I think Tre'Davious White, someone asked me on the Twitch the other day, who's the most underappreciated player in the league this year? I didn't have a solid answer at the time, but I think Tre'Davious White might be one of them. He was awesome against Odell Beckham, which is obviously a pretty tough matchup for him. Here's some numbers on Tre'Davious White on the year. He's only allowing a completion percentage of 54% when targeted. That's awesome. You throw Tre'Davious White, there's only a 50% chance that's getting completed. 49.3 quarterback rating when targeted. He has 3 interceptions on the year and has not allowed a touchdown. So he's been real great. And then someone that has disappointed a little bit here is Ed Oliver, and that's to my surprise. I thought he was one of the blue chip prospects in this class. I thought that was one of the best picks in the entire draft was Ed Oliver at number 9 to the Bills. And he just hasn't had it. He looks a little overmatched going up against NFL linemen coming from Houston. We know how explosive and athletic he is, but he hasn't been able to translate into either power rush at the leverage he has or really, a ton of finesse either. So he's struggled. We're going to have to continue to watch him develop. He's still a young guy with a ton of upside. Now, I'm not giving up on him yet, but he has disappointed early. And then for the Browns, Odell Beckham, talking about disappointment. I thought this was about as big of a lock as there was, which was Baker and Odell having a good connection. It just hasn't been there. They tried to get him involved this week. Granted, he did beat Tre'Davious White on one play, and Baker overthrew him. But for the most part, this entire year, Odell just has been a wide receiver too. He just hasn't been the same guy. And there's a lot going on here, but I think Odell deserves some of the blame for that as well. On this defense, no movement, but Sheldon Richardson's been playing a lot better lately. He might be in time for a boost next week if he plays well again against the Steelers. And then Demarius Randall came back from injury this week. He's been hit or miss this year, but he did play a lot better this week, so we'll continue to monitor him. Then we got Arizona at Tampa Bay. A couple notes here on Arizona, 2 guys not moving. Andy Isabella has emerged here. He was a speedster in the draft. Very quickly went from about a 5th-round pick to a 2nd-round pick thanks to his Senior Bowl performance and his 40 time. And then he gets to Arizona, and they decide they don't want to use him. And it was one of the more weird things because they were using a bunch of no-names, guys like Damiere Byrd, Pharaoh Cooper, but not giving Andy Isabella those opportunities. Well, this week they finally let him go out there. He gets 3 targets, like 80 yards. So he's shown why he was a 2nd-round pick. Now, he was rated pretty highly coming out for me. So for him to finally step in and do something, that's to be expected at this point. But if he continues this, he's obviously due for a boost pretty soon. And then you got Christian Kirk, another guy who I do think is a good player, had a really good year last year. We had waited to lower him because I thought that this was something he's capable of. So good to see him have a big game this week. I want to see him continue to stay more involved. I think Arizona, what they've done with kind of playing whoever's playing well in practice has been good to get Kyler's confidence going. But for the future of this team, you need Andy Isabella and Christian Kirk to really emerge as threats here. So I'd continue to play those guys. You're not making the playoffs. Get better chemistry going with Isabella and Kirk so you know that you have something special there in that passing game because the upside is totally there with these players, but you want to see it. So no movement there, but I did want to talk about those guys. And kind of the weird playing time thing that's going on there with Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. We had Zach Kerr and Patrick Peterson earlier in the show. And then for Tampa Bay, Dare Ogunbowale is getting a lot of playing time here. I don't think he's particularly talented or all that good. Kind of like baby James White coming out of Wisconsin. He's been used as that receiving back. He's a smart player with good hands. I don't think he's overly elusive, which has actually been a criticism of mine of James White. But anyway, he's going to go up, just getting more experience and showing that he is a steady pair of hands out of the backfield. And then we got Vita Vea, run stuffing supreme. He's been arguably the best defensive tackle when it comes to stuffing the run. There's some other guys out there. You got DJ Reader in Houston's been really great at that. But he's done enough as a kind of bull rushing nose tackle, as a guy that you can keep on the field all 3 downs that they did pass on Derwin James to take him, and I still think that was a terrible mistake at the time. I would totally do it differently if I had the opportunity, but it's not like Vita Vea has been a bust. So you can only hang on that bad pick for that long. Vea has been a very good player in his own right. And then another note here, Jason Pierre-Paul has been playing much better lately, so maybe due for a boost next week. All right, Giants at Jets. Actually, a lot of movement in this game. This game was a shootout. So we got Darius Slayton. He's going to go up too. He's been a very pleasant surprise for this Giants team. He's Daniel Jones' favorite target here. He shows a lot of versatility. He had a good play here. I think it was 4th down They just had him go on a slant. He showed nice release, ability to beat a guy off the line of scrimmage. To this point, he's been more of just a deep threat, but he's looking more like a versatile guy that could develop as a maybe high-end number 2 here, maybe a number 1. I don't know if he's got that much upside, probably not, but you never know. Saquon Barkley is going to go down again. Now, he's been fine, but in 1 rushing yard this week on 13 carries. The line's not like the worst thing you've ever seen. I think, he's showing some holes, some weaknesses in his game as far as his vision and, trying to do a little too much sometimes. And that was a criticism of him coming out. I'm not going to put a ton of, blame on him for all that stuff. It's not like the Giants are some amazing offensive line. But I love Saquon Barkley. But I don't know if I can confidently say, like I did in the offseason, that he's the best running back in the NFL. I think a lot of that is Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, those guys looking as good as they have. But also Saquon's just not creating the same things he did last year. So he's going to come down, still a top 3 running back, but I think it's just time here. And then David Mayo, plus 165 to a 66. That's been a good pickup for them at linebacker. Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Dexter Lawrence, we talked about during the Dave Gettleman segment. I don't need to drone on about this. These guys were awesome in run defense. They shut down Le'Veon Bell. Did it matter? Did it make a single difference in this game at all? No, it didn't. You could argue it actually helped the Jets win because it forced them to pass the ball instead of run the ball. A side effect of having good run defense that is underrated for actually hurting your team. It's better if the other team thinks they can run the ball, to be completely honest. So, these guys are good run defenders. Leonard Williams actually did rush the passer pretty well this game. Dalvin Tomlinson and Dexter Lawrence were who we thought they were as run-stuffing nose tackles. And then, if they want to take Dexter Lawrence, a nose tackle at 17, I did like them trading up for a cover guy at 28, but I didn't like the guy they picked, to be completely honest. I said it at the time. I liked the idea to go get a young corner. I liked DeAndre Baker, but to pass on Byron Murphy and Greedy Williams, who were significantly better cover guys in college, better athletes, just everything, I never understood that pick, and that's played out. DeAndre Baker has been one of the worst rookie corners in the entire NFL. Now, he's not helping by the fact that this team also can't rush the passer, but I still think that was a pretty bad pick. He's been getting roasted out there. Time for him to move down. And then for the Jets, Le'Veon Bell. Similar to everything we've said about Saquon Barkley, I still think he's incredibly talented, and he's actually been doing a better job than Saquon Barkley, both catching the ball out of the backfield, making guys miss, fighting for tough yardage. And I've kind of thought for the last few weeks that I had him a little too high there at 94, but he had never really played bad enough to lower him. So it's been kind of accumulating over time, but it's just kind of week by week by week. It's like I've got him rated as tied for the best running back in the league, but he's clearly not that anymore. So it's really just, it's time to move him down. Christian McCaffrey actually is going to be the highest rated running back in the roster this week. And then Dalvin Cook, spoiler alert, getting a boost this week. So some pretty major changes with the running back outlook for the league. Jamal Adams going up here. The play he had on Daniel Jones was just elite, rare, special, but he was good in coverage all game. I think he had 2 sacks in this one. He's just a do-it-all defensive diamond. Like, you can just do everything. I'm happy for the Jets' sake that they did not trade him. He was just the best player on the field, period. And then Bleswan Austin. This is definitely someone to keep an eye on here. I had him on my sleepers list on my draft board as a guy that actually played pretty well when he did play in college at Rutgers, right? But had, I can't remember if it's injury or off the field issues, but basically he was kind of a diamond in the rough type of guy with really good athleticism, length, the physical profile of a number 1 corner. He gets his first start here and dominated. So could they have found that sleeper here? We'll find out as the season goes on. I expect them to continue to play him because it's not like they got a bunch of promise with other players in that secondary. And then Jordan Jenkins has been really good. Just a good number 2 pass rusher. He gets a few pressures every week, stops the run. He can even drop him in coverage. Smart player, playing well coming off of injury. Then we got Atlanta at New Orleans. Big upset this week. Atlanta fans are going to hate this, but actually no movement this week. This team's been incredibly disappointing this year, and we've probably held back on lowering a lot of guys. But this is a win that we expected Atlanta to be capable of going into the year. So No individual performances in this game really stood out to me. Kendall Sheffield played well. Thought about raising him, but he was so bad the last 2 weeks. I can't really do that. So actually no movement here for Atlanta, as I thought they were totally capable of playing like this. They just haven't shown it this year. So no movement for them. For the Saints, they really need another guy to step up here in the receiving game. Ted Ginn has not been that guy. Jared Cook has not been that guy. What's his name? Traquan Smith has shown tons of flashes, but he just hasn't been consistent at all. He's almost like the Saints version of Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Both these teams have one really good wide receiver and then no one else. So Ted Ginn's going to go down. He played poor this game. And then Marcus Williams has been incredible lately, showing off that range as a free safety. He's going up again, marching up towards being one of the highest rated free safeties in the game. Interior defensive lineman Shai Tuttle, another Dave Gettleman conversation here. Undrafted pickup here. The Saints do this with a ton of players. Shai Tuttle's been awesome against the run all year. And then Demario Davis, an underappreciated player on the Saints defense. He flies around. He's basically like a faster Donta Hightower for the Patriots. He's got that huge size, like 6'2", 250, but he's got the speed, the burst. He'll rush the passer on blitzes. He's got range and coverage, awesome tackler. Like, he is just a monster. He's straight up one of the best linebackers in the entire NFL. That was such a good signing by the Saints. This front office is genius in that they just load up on depth at linebacker, corner. They find ways to make it work with their cap, and they say, we can't have enough big, fast, strong, smart defensive players, and it's paid off as this defense has emerged as one of the best in the league this year. Then we got Miami at Indianapolis. Kind of a crappy game, but we got a lot of movement for Miami, who's, showing that they got some fight in there. Evan Boehm, I don't know how to say that, but actually started at center last week, was pretty solid. He kicks to guard this week. Ironically, they've won both those games and played a little better on offense, so they need guys to just be stable pass blockers for them, and he's been that. Some movement at the wide receiver, Devontae Parker. He looks like he's playing for a contract, and I actually think he's worth a decent contract, maybe like a 2-year, $20 million type of deal. I wouldn't fully go all in on him, but I do think that this is a guy that if you put him in a different situation, I think it's time to move on here in Miami, but if you put him in a different situation, he can still show that upside and become a number one guy. And then Albert Wilson, he was unbelievable last year in his short period of time before he got injured. He got that huge contract from Kansas City. But coming off of injury this year just has not been that same playmaker. A team like this that can't really pass block, you would expect to get a guy like Albert Wilson who's good with the ball in his hands. You'd expect them to really target him and get him more involved, but they just haven't been able to do it. So he's going to come down. And then at cornerback, Nick Needham, just breaking out here, an undrafted rookie, a dominant performance this week. Granted, it was against Brian Hoyer and a T.Y. Hilton-less Colts team, but just a really awesome story here coming out, undrafted for a bad Dolphins team. He earns a starting job and has been killing it. And then you also have Ken Crawley here, by the way. I didn't move him. He was a decently rated corner from New Orleans who they actually let go. Miami picks him up. They start him, and he played pretty well. And then you got Bobby McCain, has been a nickel corner here, and he's been playing really well at free safety. So this secondary, you got maybe Aqib Talib coming back next year. You got Xavier Howard, who's one of the better corners out there. You got Crawley, Nick Needham here. You got Bobby McCain at free safety. You got a lot of pieces to build around here in this secondary moving forward. And then Vince Beagle, he continues to go up here. He's been a stud in this Belichickian scheme as that versatile linebacker. He's definitely found a home. I think he could be a guy that gets kind of a surprising, 3-year, $15 million contract here. And a lot of people are like, Vince who? But people that watch the studs and duds are going to be like, oh yeah, Vince Beagle. He's that versatile stud that's been killing it for Miami all year. And then you got Indianapolis, Rock Ya-Sin, rookie corner. He's had his ups and downs. It's just a reminder that all rookie corners are going to struggle at some point. All corners in general are, but especially rookies. Now, Giants fans are going to be like, but you lowered DeAndre Baker. Yeah, he's been bad all year. He hasn't even shown really good signs. Rock Ya-Sin had a really good game this week. He's going to go up. And then rookie safety, Kari Willis, he's heating up. He's going up this week as well. He is showing some great pursuit, tackling, discipline, just what you would expect from a well-coached Michigan State safety. Carolina at Green Bay. This was an exciting game. Kyle Allen was actually really good in this game. He eluded a ton of pressures in this one. The Packers, I think it was 35 pressures in this game. This offensive line was getting demolished, but Kyle Allen was incredible eluding pressures. It felt like Green Bay just couldn't get him down. They could get to him, but they couldn't get him down, and then he was throwing some darts on the move. So he's going to go up 1, thought about +2, but he's shown some pretty bad signs this year as well. I've talked a lot about Kyle Allen on all my different platforms this week. They're going to get a really good opportunity the rest of the season to evaluate him and kind of make a decision on if he can be stable enough to go into your next year as the starter. If he plays like this, he absolutely would be. But he's had games this year as well where he looks like a backup. So we'll see. I did want to talk about what's going on with the offensive line in Carolina. I mentioned how bad they were. So they've been moving these guys all over the place, right? If you've been following this series all year. So they actually benched Dennis Daly at left tackle, who has been a riser lately, but he was miserable. Preston Smith was just running around him. So they bench him, and then what they do is they actually take Taylor Moton, who's been a really good right tackle all year, move him to left tackle, and then they take Darrell Williams, who a lot of people remember from 2 years ago was one of the stars of this series, went from like a 65 to like an 84 overall, was one of the best right tackles in the NFL 2 years ago. Season-ending injury last year. This year has been playing at left guard, left tackle. He's been benched. He's been rotated in. So they bench Daly. They take the right tackle, put him at left tackle, and then they put Darrell Williams back at right tackle where it all began, and he was great at right tackle. So I don't know what the hell they're doing. Why wouldn't you play Darrell Williams at one of those tackle spots? Probably right tackle where he's shown to be good. Stick Moton at left tackle and just play him. Like, I just don't understand what's going on there. The coaching decisions, I wanted to point that out. We'll see what they do next week. DJ Moore has been great this year. Really impressive that he continues to play well. I think it's good signs for both those guys in that rookie class from last year, DJ Moore and Courtland Sutton. Good to see them continue to play well despite playing with pretty bad quarterbacks. Granted, Kyle Allen played well this game, but you get the point. He's been awesome. And then Matt Paradise and Trey Turner are going down. They were an embarrassment this week. Kenny Clark was just bulldozing through them like they were high school linemen. It was just not acceptable tackle play. Paradise has been pretty bad this year, so that's looking like a free agency signing that I thought was going to be a lock, that was going to help that offensive line become a stable force as like a top 3 offensive line, and they've just had a lot of inconsistencies. They've shown flashes, but with all this rotation, with Paradise being hit or miss, Trey Turner doesn't look like the guy he used to be. There's just a lot of questions on that offensive line right now. And then for Green Bay, talk about questions. They don't have receivers outside of Devontae Adams. Rodgers is just trying to figure out who he can trust out there. So Jimmy Graham and Marquez Valdes-Scantling are going to come down this week. I talked about Jimmy Graham on the podcast, but you know, his spatial awareness in the red zone has been pathetic. Like, he had a touchdown. Rodgers had a great, amazing play, eluded pressure, rolled out to the left, threw a perfectly placed ball in a tight window, put it right in Jimmy Graham's gut. He didn't even have to do anything. But for some reason, Jimmy Graham, as he's getting pushed out of bounds, decides to float his left foot, and instead of just hinging at the knee and tapping his left foot, thinks it's okay to just slowly get pushed out of bounds with one foot on the ground. Like, just put your foot on the ground and complete the touchdown. And then they end up going for it on 4th down and they don't get it. So, like, he's been awful all year. Yeah, he's been wide open occasionally, but his run after catch ability is embarrassing. He clearly is not fast anymore. He's just been awful. This signing's been a nightmare. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has effectively been benched here. I think Rodgers is sick of throwing to him and him dropping the ball or not making slight efforts to fight through contact and make catches. You know, it feels like Jake Kumerow, Alan Lazard, these are the guys that Rodgers trusts right now. Kumerow's going to go up for that reason. Lazard had a critical drop on 3rd down in this game. It's just a mess right now. There was plenty of plays in this game where they were saying, thank God we have Devontae Adams back, but it's a problem right now. You know, Brian Gutekunst should be pretty ashamed right now that these are the receivers he chose to trot out there in a year that the rest of this roster is almost perfect. And then you got Zadarius Smith, at least Gutekunst can hang on this. This was probably the signing of the year, to be completely honest. I mean, he's second in the NFL in pressures, period. More than Nick Bosa, more than Joey Bosa, more than Everson Griffin, not Everson Griffin, I meant to say Myles Garrett, Khalil Mack, Von Miller. He's been unblockable this year. So, he's going to go up here 82 to 83. And then Kingsley Keke plus 165 to a 66. He's not really making a huge impact here, but had him rated pretty lowly. He's getting a part of this rotation and playing all right in run defense. They need another guy to step up here. So then we got Rams at the Steelers. Jared Goff's going to come down. Don't need to explain that. Anyone that watched that game can see that Jared Goff is struggling. When things just aren't perfect here, he just can't really create anything. He had 3 fumbles in this game and 2 interceptions. Looking a lot more like rookie Jared Goff right now. And then Rob Havenstein has been quite possibly the most disappointing player of the season. He looked like a guy whose stock was only trending upwards. And I don't know if TJ Watt just knew everything about Rob Havenstein, having played with him in college, but he just got embarrassed this week. I know I keep saying that, but there was some embarrassing performances this week. Just all year, he just has not been that high-level tackle that they paid him to be. And he's got to turn this thing around fast because they need help on that offensive line because Whitworth's gone. And, they don't have anyone else other than Havenstein. And even Havenstein's playing at a replacement level right now. Corey Littleton, as we flip over to the defensive side of the ball, this is a name that you guys should start to get familiar with. He is going to hit free agency this year, and I think he's going to get a lot of money. I think he's going to be in that Quan Alexander range. Maybe the Rams somehow figure out how to pay him. If Littleton's smart, he's going to demand $12, $13 million. He is the prototypical modern linebacker. He's like a Deion Jones, that undersized guy that flies around, great in coverage. If you're a team like Cincinnati, New York Giants, Green Bay Packers, you better take a look at this guy because you are desperate for someone like him. And the Rams are just so cap strong. I don't know how they're going to be able to afford him, but he has been killing it this year. Plus 174 to a 75. Keep in mind that might seem a little lower. That's actually like a top 10 linebacker because middle linebacker, for some reason, with Madden, the rating just comes in a little lower. So that is a situation where Madden does make it look a little lower than it is. Then you got Troy Hill at corner. He's heating up. I think the Marcus Peters trade has actually been a win-win. I think Peters is a better fit in the Ravens scheme. And Troy Hill has been playing much better than Peters was as that number 2 corner for the Rams. So good for him to step up and play pretty well here. He might continue to rise. And then you got the Steelers here. David DeCastro, he was still kind of living off of that elite season he had 2 years ago, but he's just been kind of good, not great. I think it was just time to lower him here, 88 to an 86. I do have a huge question here. Why the hell did the Steelers play Matt Filer at left guard? He wasn't particularly good there. They put, what's the guys? They put their developmental right tackle in there at right tackle. He was fine, but Matt Filer has been one of the best right tackles in the NFL this year. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why move Filer to left guard and stir this thing up? I would put Filer right back at right tackle because it just didn't really work here. Granted, he saw Aaron Donald this week, but still. Then Minka Fitzpatrick's going to go up plus 4. This is unlike anything you've ever seen. I don't know why Miami didn't play him at free safety. I don't know why when they did occasionally try him at free safety, he played really poorly. But he's come in here at Pittsburgh and looked like the best free safety in the NFL. By a long shot. So he's been incredible. He looks like Earl Thomas back there. He's just always right around the ball. Some of his interceptions and fumble recoveries and stuff, it is luck, as with any safety. But a lot of times he's jumping routes. You can tell that he's coming from the other side of the field. And yeah, it might have been a tip ball that lands in his lap, but it wouldn't have landed in his lap if he didn't have that good break on the ball. So he's been awesome. And then you got TJ Watt. I went at it with Steelers fans a little bit over the last year or two because I've said TJ Watt's a really good player. He's a developing number 2 edge guy with a lot of upside. But I want to ask Steelers fans, do you notice a difference with TJ Watt this year than in years past? He's had flash plays throughout his career. He's shown that he can be a really good player, but he's been more hit or miss. This year, it feels like every third down, every game, you can rely on this guy to be an impact. That's a number one edge rusher when I talk about it. So the TJ Watt, definitely worthy of a boost here, plus 382 to an 85. Getting him playing at this elite level and adding an elite free safety has changed the game for this Steelers defense, and it's helping a guy like Joe Hayden play really well too. So this defense has come together really nicely. It's quite frankly a top 3 defense at the moment. It's going to be exciting to see down the stretch, like can they beat like really good offenses with this defense, or is this just the kind of defense that's going to take a dump on bad teams, but maybe just like most defenses, I suppose, are going to get exposed a little bit against better offenses. So then we've got just 2 games left here, a shorter week. So we've got Minnesota at Dallas, a ton of movement in these last 2 games. So Kyle Rudolph, gonna give him some love. I've been very hard on Kyle Rudolph. I still don't understand why he can't run block when he's one of the biggest, most oversized, slowest tight ends in the league. But one thing he does do really well is catch the ball in the red zone. And he's like the anti-Jimmy Graham in that. Neither of these guys block. Neither of them are great after the catch. Neither of them create a lot of separation. But Kyle Rudolph is at least incredibly physical at the point of catch and can make spectacular catches. So he's going to get some love this week. I mean, if you look at his Madden rating, like he has like 90 plus at every catch thing. It's just everything else he doesn't do very well, which I think is very fair. Next, we got Dalvin Cook. It was kind of like it's just time week for running backs. I don't know whatever is going on with my system for how I do this. Running backs is just a little harder, I suppose, to stand out because a lot of times it is so run block dependent. But Dalvin Cook, you can just tell he's the best running back in the NFL right now. I think if it's 3rd and 1, I'd rather have Dalvin Cook than Christian McCaffrey. If it's 3rd and 6, I'd rather have Christian McCaffrey because of what he does in space as a receiver. But both these guys are just elite. They're both Offensive Player of the Year candidates. I don't say MVP candidates because they are still running backs. But, I mean, he was the best player on the field in this game against Dallas, and he was awesome. As we move over to the defensive side of the ball, Holton Hill is someone to note here. This Vikings team has been incredible up front. We've talked about Everson Griffin. Danielle Hunter leads the NFL in pressures this year. They need help on the back end. Xavier Rhodes is going to go down here, minus 180 to a 79. And the rest of these corners, Mike Hughes was their first-round pick last year. He has not been playing very well, so they need help here. They get Holton Hill back from suspension. Now, he was actually the highest-rated corner on this Vikings team last year. He's an undrafted player out of Texas. He is a freak athlete. You want to talk about short area quickness? Holton Hill at 6'1" can accelerate and move in space better than anyone. So he's a super high upside corner that happened to fall because of drug issues, and that's why he was suspended here. But they get him back here, and he played great this week. So if he continues to get more playing time, that could be a game-changing addition to a Super Bowl contending team, because if Xavier Rhodes all of a sudden doesn't have to be your number 1 corner and he can kind of be more like Marcus Peters is now for the Ravens, and maybe Holton Hill can actually be that number 1 corner for this team, it could change the game for this Vikings defense, where they could go from a really good defense to all of a sudden a terrifying, scary elite defense, especially with that coaching staff and the continuity they have across the rest of the board there. Then we got, for Dallas, a lot of people are frustrated that Amari Cooper has not gone up this year. And I understand it. Like, I'm a big Amari Cooper guy. I think he's a top 3 route runner in the NFL and certainly top 3 release in the NFL. And I'm all about creating separation over making contested catches. Now, the thing with Amari Cooper, why I haven't boosted him up this year, is it feels like every time he has a great game, and when you're rated this high for me, I need to see multiple good games before I boost you up in a row. Because, you're still graded as one of the best receivers in the NFL. I fully expect you to go out and have big games, but do you follow it up and show that truly elite, top 5 performance to get that boost? And Amari Cooper's been what he's been over his career, where he'll have those big games, and then he'll come out and drop 2 balls the next week, or he won't be the same player the next week. That was a big deal with him in Oakland, and he still shows some of that here in Dallas. But his highs are as high as anyone out there, so we're going to raise him for having his best game of the year here, plus 2, 85 to an 87. he has been killing it. And this passing game as a whole looks really good right now. You got Randall Cobb, looks healthy, a little closer to what he used to look like. And then Michael Gallup, he's a fan favorite here. I would be pretty fired up about Michael Gallup as well. He's a really high upside player. I liked him coming out. He has 8 drops this season. That's why he hasn't been shooting up the ratings. But other than that, if he can just, haul in some of these drops quite literally, he could really be a super high-end number 2. And, you look at this receiving core, it's one of the best in the NFL, if that can happen. His comp coming out was Stephon Diggs, and Stephon Diggs has drop issues as well. Dak Prescott as well, He's got a lot of good receivers out there. He's got a great offensive line, but, he's not, at a loss of credit here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, he's been playing great. He's making really good throws on the run. He's been pretty accurate in the intermediate game. So he's going to go up 75 to a 76. And then Blake Jarwin as well is getting more involved here. He's a good athlete. He's probably a better tight end than Jason Witten at this point. So plus 170 to a 71. Now, Ezekiel Elliott's going to keep going down. He's just, I think, been living off of his pedigree of, being this generational running back. And I guess as far as my Madden rating is concerned, I guess I've always just kind of accepted it and put him up there as a top 5 running back. But, honestly, I've always had this opinion, and it's come out in a lot of my podcasts and the way I talk about Zeke for multiple years now. I've never fully understood that. I didn't even have him that high ahead of Derrick Henry in that draft class. I thought it was a moronic pick. He's a really good running back. But if he wasn't with the Dallas Cowboys, if he wasn't behind this offensive line, if he wasn't playing on primetime every 3 weeks, we would look at Ezekiel Elliott just like we do with Melvin Gordon or Joe Mixon even, if Joe Mixon was in a better situation. Like, he's a really good running back. I'm not trying to say that Zeke sucks, but he is just, simply put, not in the same class as Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. Like, just compare those two in this game. Like, Cowboys fans, you get tired of me ripping on Zeke for not making guys miss, not making a big impact in the receiving game, not having these electric plays. You want to know what that looks like? You want to know what I want to see from Zeke if I want to consider him as any kind of top 5 running back in this league? That's it right there. Zeke has never done that, ever, in his career. He's really good at falling forward. He's explosive. He takes care of the ball. He stays healthy. There's a lot of good things about Zeke, but he's not as complete, well-rounded running back that everyone's always said he is. That's always just been this accepted fact, and I just have never seen it. So let's move on from Zeke. We got Michael Bennett. He's going to go, not going to go up here, but he had a bunch of pressures in this game. I still got him rated as an 81, actually, because he was awesome with the Eagles last year. So if the Cowboys found that version of Michael Bennett instead of the lackluster, non-noticeable version of Michael Bennett that they just got from the Patriots, that's going to be huge for this defense. And then at safety, Darian Thompson's actually stepped up these last couple weeks in the box. So has Xavier Woods. I was really close to raising Woods. If he's good again next week, he's going to go up. Thompson was actually drafted by this Cowboys team. He went over after kind of sucking for 2 years. He went to the Giants, sucked there. Now he's back in Dallas, and he's not sucking, so he's going to get some love. All right, last game here, Seattle at San Francisco. Jacob Hollister. This was one of my first kind of scouting, professional scouting sleeper guys when I was working for a local agency. I was watching Josh Allen. I saw Jacob Hollister out there just making all these crazy catches. He ends up going like undrafted, but he makes the Patriots team. He's been kind of in and out of their practice squad. They didn't seem to get him going. I think it's because of the fact that he's a little smaller. He's not as good of a blocker. I know Belichick and that Patriots team, they want really well-rounded tight ends who they can get going as blockers and stuff, but Hollister is beefed up a little bit here in Seattle. He's gotten a little more physical, but he's clearly showing that he is a mismatch problem as a receiver, just as he was at Wyoming. So he's a really interesting player. He's a good athlete. He's got really good hands. He runs good routes. So we're going to keep an eye on him. They've got some depth there at tight end, but I think they're going to have to continue to get him going, even if and when Will Dissly comes back. Then you got Malik Turner. This is just the least surprising thing in Seattle, in a week where they traded for Josh Gordon, a week after DK Metcalf has kind of broken out last week, and they seem to have their starting 3 wide receivers. I guess it was helped by the fact that Tyler Lockett left this game, but Malik Turner totally fits the prototype here in Seattle. Almost all of their receivers, with the exception of Lockett, are north of 6 feet tall, really big physical guys, really stiff guys, not complete wide receivers, but can run deep routes, and they all run block. That is the consistent thing. So Malik Turner's shown some good run block in the last few weeks. He's getting more and more playing time, and he showed up this week. Made some big catches. And was really good blocking the run as well. So that's what they want. They want guys that can run block, because this team is stubborn about running the ball on first and second down. And then they want guys that can get open deep, because off play action, Russell Wilson throws the deep ball better than maybe anyone ever. So Malik Turner is just another weapon there for this team, getting some boost here. And then on the defensive side of the ball, this defense is showing some life. This has really not been a good defense this year, to be completely honest. But Jadeveon Clowney had his best game as a Seahawk. It was frankly one of the most dominant games of Jadeveon Clowney's career, who has been very inconsistent, but definitely worth a boost after what he did last week against Joe Staley and a really good 49ers offensive line. 10 pressures in that game was just, you could feel him on every single drop back, it felt like. And then Shaquille Griffin's had an up and down career and an up and down season, but his highs are pretty high. He was out there covering really well. He seems to be getting more and more comfortable here. He's a pretty high upside player. He even looks at times like a young Richard Sherman out there with the dreads. So he's going to go up plus 274 to a 76. And then Brandon Jackson, another guy that's just earning some playing time here. Physical player, that big body defensive end in this 4-3 scheme, can stop the run. They got a bunch of these guys. It happened to be Brandon Jackson this week. And then for the 49ers, a ton of movement. Got to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo here. Now, it's no secret, I'm a big Jimmy Garoppolo guy. I had picks on him to win the MVP this year. I thought he was going to emerge as a top 5, top 8 elite quarterback. And even me, I've been disappointed in what I've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo. I am willing to admit, if and when I'm wrong, maybe I was a little bit too high on Jimmy Garoppolo. And we've seen flashes. We've seen flashes like at Arizona. Granted, it's a bad Arizona defense, but Jimmy just hasn't really taken that step up. And I think the big thing is he just makes a lot of almost Jameis Winston-esque bad interceptions. That's the thing that I think I was wrong with Jimmy Garoppolo, because I think he is still showing that elite pocket presence. He's mobile enough to extend plays. A good pro comp for him is Tony Romo, who did a lot of those bad interceptions. I think we're actually seeing a reincarnation of Tony Romo right now, which can be a good thing. Tony Romo never had the team that he has around him right now in San Francisco. I think Tony Romo is one of the best quarterbacks to never win a Super Bowl. So, I'm not trying to totally rip on Jimmy Garoppolo. I think you just got to understand where I'm coming from with him, and that I thought he was going to emerge as a truly elite quarterback this year, and it just hasn't happened to this point. He was not amazing in this game at all. He's shown some inaccuracies as well. At wide receiver, Deebo Samuel, he stepped out when Sanders went down. He was really their go-to guy. This is another team that clearly does not have a ton of receiver talent. It's interesting. The 3 best teams in the NFC right now, Packers, Saints, and the Niners, really not a lot of depth at receiver. And they were out George Kittle in this game, who is their best receiving target. Dante Pettis, it's not that they're not trying to get him involved. They targeted him 3 times in this game, couldn't get anything to work. He's been on and off the field just for lack of playing time. He's been a big disappointment this year. A lot of people thought he was going to have a breakout year, and it just has not happened at all. And then on the defensive side of the ball, DJ Jones is emerging here. He's played well in limited playing time the last few weeks. Definitely benefits from the depth on that D-line, and benefited this week going against a terrible Seattle offensive line. But he's definitely been noticeable getting his reps. And then this secondary getting a ton of boosts here. It's been a huge, pleasant surprise this year is this Niners secondary. So you got Kwan Williams. We know he's got the talent. He's had off-field issues throughout his career, but he's kind of stable here, and he's shown that he's one of the best nickel corners in the entire league. Then you got Jimmy Ward. He's made a full-time transition, for now at least. He's bounced all over the place, but as far as his positions are concerned. But he's been the free safety here, showing off that range and instincts that he's got. And then we got Dre Greenlaw. He's going up. He made that big pick against Russell Wilson in overtime. He's had his ups and downs this year, but a young, athletic cover linebacker making a name for himself here. And then Richard Sherman here. He's been incredible this year at his age, coming off the injuries he's had. He's benefiting from playing in the perfect scheme here. You know, this is pretty similar to what he had back with the Legion of Boom, with an awesome pass rush and the secondary around him to help. He can really do what he does well and just take away one side of the field, play that press man, cover three, break on screens and stuff, show that physicality. He's having a great time this year. And then Emmanuel Mosley, he's been one of the stories of the year for this Niners team. You know, they've had injuries there. They lost Akello Witherspoon. They, to nobody's surprise, lost Jason Verrett. But Emmanuel Mosley, an undrafted guy last year, has been a total breakout and a really steady player there at corner for them. So that's it. Didn't end up being any shorter. We really dove in pretty deep this week, but I hope you enjoyed. I hope if you made it this far, you consider hitting that like button. Tell your friends about this show. It's really all I can ask. So cheers as always, guys. We'll see you for the next one. Peace.